to Tabook, a podcast about banned, censored, and controversial children's books. I'm Adriana.
My name is Maria.
In this episode, we discuss Anthony Comstock, a deeply weird man who loved censorship and hated pretty much everything.
Welcome to our first episode. What are we talking about today?
Today, we are taking a trip into the past to 1873.
Okay.
To Anthony Comstock.
And Anthony what?
Anthony Comstock
Okay.
was basically the biggest censor. That was his thing. In 1873, he played a major role in passing a federal law that censored pretty much everything that he didn't like, from information about birth control to abortion to erotica to sex ed to medical texts about how to give women medical assistance, because we can't acknowledge that women have a physical form. That makes them too dangerous, I guess.
Who was he? Why could he just censor anything he wanted?
So he was basically an activist. He started his career as a businessman in New York, but he was super influential as an anti-vice crusader. And he lobbied to get the censorship bill passed, which made it illegal to distribute anything quote-unquote obscene through the U.S. Postal Service. Because he had such a huge role in its passage, and because after it passed, he was basically in charge of making it happen. It was called the Comstock Law. That's how closely associated he was with this, even though he was not a politician.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he had too much time on his hands.
He definitely did.
The reason we're talking about him is that he was also a huge campaigner against certain kinds of children's books, especially books that he thought would sort of lead children astray.
Okay.
These are the dime novels, mystery novels. He thought that basically that was Satan's hand taking children and leading them away from godly thoughts.
Okay. So detectives are just Satan now.
Yeah, I mean, basically.
Saving the children from magnifying glasses. They're too dangerous.
You say magnifying glasses. So in 1883, he wrote a treatise called Traps for the Young. And he says he bought a paper where stories were serialized. So he was reading little sections of a bunch of different stories. And he lists all the horrible, anti-Christian evil things that he found in this paper, and I would like to read to you some of the things that he found. A man murdered by being blown up with explosives.
Okay.
A beautiful girl, by lying in deceit, seeks to captivate one whom she loves. A woman murdered by masked burglars. An attempt to force a beautiful girl to marry a scoundrel to save her benefactor. One woman who died in New York comes to life in Italy. 2 attempted assassinations. 1 confidence operator at work to swindle a stranger. An assault on the highway. A hired assassin. A rich man is confronted in a castle by a woman he has ruined, who raises such an outcry that he becomes purple and rigid while blood gushes from his mouth. The woman takes a vial from her pocket and instantly cures him.
Ooh.
I mean, I want to read this stuff. It sounds amazing. So yeah, that's funny, but after the federal law was passed, about half the states also created their own versions of these laws. And they're all called the Comstock laws, collectively, because they were all basically due to his influence. And as a whole, they criminalized the distribution of quote-unquote obscene material through basically any route, not just the U.S. Postal Service. Comstock bragged that he had caused 15 tons of books to be destroyed. So the result of these laws, 2 things happened, actually, which happened pretty much whenever you talk about censorship. First, there was a huge backlash. Even in the 1800s, people were not having it. Writers and artists were creating more obscene material. They were protesting. But at the same time, the censorship laws created a ton of obviously like very public shame, especially for women who are way more likely to have their lives ruined by public trials. And these laws did lead directly to suicides. One of those women was Ida Craddock, who was a women's rights and sex education advocate who like famously killed herself after Comstock had basically hounded her for like 10 years. So yeah, I mean, he was literally the worst person.
I can see that.
Ironically, even though it was like young women mostly who were harmed by these laws, when the courts upheld them, they argued that the laws were necessary to protect young women from all these vices that could corrupt them.
Oh, where have I heard that before?
I know. I do have a game.
Okay.
Which unhinged quote is from Anthony Comstock's 1883 Traps for the Young, and which is from a modern unhinged activist?
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. The world is the devil's hunting ground, and children are his choicest game.
I'm gonna go with Anthony for this one.
Correct.
Yes.
Ding, 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 ding.
I'm so good at this game. I've only played one round, but I'm winning.
Okay, that's it. That's it. There is something wonderfully strange in the rapidity with which youthful minds take up lewd thoughts and suggestions.
I'm gonna go with modern?
That is Anthony.
Anthony?
He loved...
You didn't talk about the devil. How was I supposed
right?
to know, Tony?
Tony. He's our mascot now. Who said, "He alone who owns youth gains the future"?
I'm gonna go with... I'm gonna go with a modern person because that does not mention the devil.
Actually, that was a trick question. It was Hitler.
Oh.
But it was quoted by the Indiana chapter of Moms for Liberty.
Oh.
In modern days.
Oh my god! And they just thought, oh, I'm gonna quote Hitler.
Yeah.
And that is a not unhinged thing to do.
Moms for Liberty be wilding.
Oh my god!
The curses and spells used in these books are actual curses and spells, which, when read by a human being, risk conjuring evil spirits into the presence of the person reading the text.
Okay, before I answer that, one time I had to read H.P. Lovecraft for school, and I was reading The Case of Charles Dexter Ward by H.P. Lovecraft for school, and it was like, okay, so I'm not a horror girly, so I was very bored, and it was like 2 a.m, and he had this one spell in his book that the character was doing, and I started doing it because I was like, well, it can't be true. And then I was just about to finish it, and I felt something like shift in the world's energy, and I was like, I cannot finish this spell, so I left it unfinished.
Oh my god.
But I was like, oh my god, this was so scary, and then I couldn't read the book at 2 a.m. anymore. I was too scared. So I'm gonna say it's not as, like, I'm not against what the quote says, but I'm gonna go with Anthony because he seems to believe in magic, like I do, apparently.
It was actually a Catholic priest talking about Harry Potter.
Oh, wow.
I also, that, like, resurrected a memory of me reading the Animorphs as a child and trying to turn into my dog.
I was so scared of those books as a child. Like,
the covers.
Yeah, yeah, like, so I think because I'm just gonna confess this in our first episode, apparently. I'm terrified of werewolves.
Don't send werewolves to Maria.
No, please do not. I will cry every single time. And I think it's the transformation that gets me, like that moment where they're not wolf or human, like, and they're just like in between, and that really freaks me out.
Yeah.
And in the Animorphs books, you can see, like, every single page has, like, a little drawing when they're turning from, like, human into whatever it is they're turning into. And that would just freak me out. Like, I could not even open the books because then I would see the little drawing and just, like, scream. So I think those books are terrifying.
I get you. I mean,
Nightmare
I can't relate,
fuel.
But, oh no. Okay. I think you won, but we'll have to check in the edit, because if you didn't win, I'll insert a clip right now, removing any glory from this moment.
What?
Just chastising.
No,
you.
it's me. I won.
We are
no
totally
matter what Adriana says.
We're totally
I won.
committed to the truth in this podcast. we can't censor anything.
I won. It's not
I think you won.
censorship. It's just delusionalship. I was gonna say that these things that you said he censored really remind me of, like, there's a Mexican telenovela that is really popular, and it's all about the drama, and it's always, like, the stupidest problem you will ever think about, and the Virgin somehow always saves these people. So it's like, yeah, like, there's this one episode where this kid becomes addicted to marijuana. Like, and he's just like addicted. He's like screaming at people, like being like, "No, I must smoke!" And then the Virgin saves him, and everyone's like, "Yay, the Virgin!" And I think he would really love that TV show. I think he'd be so for it. Because all the problems, like, in one episode, this girl becomes addicted to her phone and, like, falls off of a 3-story building because somebody takes it from her and, like, throws it out the window, and she, like, jumps after it, and she, like, falls. And then it's, like, the Virgin saves her, and she doesn't want to use her phone anymore.
Please tell me that, like, the Virgin just jumped.
No, it's just, like, I don't even know, because I've never watched a complete episode, but I think it's just like a painting of the Virgin, and they, like, look at it, and then there's, like, a magical wind and, like, you know, like, singing angels and, like, a light, and they are saved.
It's more interesting than my phone. This is weird. They're just staring at that instead. It's like their new addiction. Yeah, I've seen Wishbone. There was a Wishbone episode, again, like another, like, a 90s children's TV show where they, instead of, like, children reading literature, it's acted out by a Jack Russell Terrier. And there was one that was set in Mexico, and I didn't understand it at all because I didn't get the cultural references, but yeah, like, the Virgin just, like, arrives, and there's some roses, and she pets the Jack Russell Terrier, and everything's okay.
Oh. So I thought this was, like, a general, like, Bible story, but there's this one man in the Mexican Bible, or, like, it's the only story I know. So first you have to know my family is not religious, and when I was a child, one of my older friends, like, he was, like, 3 years older than me, and we were in school together, and we would talk sometimes because we would both be in school until it was, like, late because our parents were late. And he once gave me as a present, like, 2 VHSs of, like, biblical stories. I was, like, obsessed with the animation. And there's this one story of a man. I don't remember the details. Like, he was very poor, as they always are, and then he went to a mountain and he filled up his, like, the front of his poncho, like, with flowers.
That's it! That was the
Yes.
Wishbone story, yes! And
then he like, lets them fall.
Yeah,
and the
it's so
Virgin is
majestic.
painted on his poncho.
Yeah! Okay, I knew the flowers were involved somehow. Yes.
But it's just, like, it's a Bible story. Yeah. I thought everyone would know it, but maybe we made it up.
I think that's a Mexican thing.
Interesting. a Mexican religion. Like, we just made it up.
Yeah, okay, here he is. Sorry to our listeners, but here's Wishbone staring at the flowers.
Oh my god. Yes! Juan Diego! Because, okay, so I went with my mom to, like, a street market, and they had a painting of Juan Diego with his poncho and the Virgin on his poncho. And apparently I was obsessed with this painting and really wanted my mom to buy it for me. She was like, why is my child so religious? And I was just like, please, please, please get me the painting of Juan Dieguito, which is like a really like familiarized way of calling him. I was just like, he is my friend and I want him.
You were such a creepy child. Oh my god.
I don't know what was wrong with me. But yeah, I was obsessed.
Wow. Was your mother afraid you were going to become like a nun or something?
Yeah. She had to hide those VHSs from me. But I really liked the drawings. I was not taking in the fact that it was religious at all. I was just like, the drawings were so cute.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that's interesting because we're talking about like what are children
absorbing.
And what content isn't appropriate for them. Because your mother was clearly like, this is a bad path my child is on. I need to censor this content for a few years.
But yeah, I guess it does all lead back to why do people censor things for children? What do they think is happening in the child's mind? Mm-hmm. And what is actually happening in the child's mind? Like, they think we're reading about detectives, and since all detectives deal with murder, they think we're thinking about how to murder people, but actually we're thinking about how cool it would be to carry around a magnifying glass and see things. I remember my first magnifying glass, my grandpa told me that you could, like, set things on fire.
Oh, yeah.
I tried and I never got it. Oh. And he would keep helping me. He would be like, come on, we need to do this. And I never managed to set anything on fire. Oh. I would just get bored before it caught on fire. And he was just like, you need to be able to do this.
I mean, that's like, that does feel like a life skill, honestly.
Yeah, I'm lost. It's the zombie apocalypse. Yeah. I need to start a fire. And I only have a magnifying glass in my toolkit.
Yeah, that is absolutely one of those, like, things you think will be relevant when you are a child. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, there's quicksand. Yeah.
The Bermuda Triangle.
Mm-hmm. For me, it was, like, going into space, but not being in space. It was just, like, I was really nervous about when I was going into space.
I remember I used to be terrified of tornadoes. I think because of Wizard of Oz, I was just, like, terrified. And my mom had to, like, actually take me to a place where I could see the layout of my city. And it's really, like, a hilly place. She was like, do you see all these hills? And I'm like, yes. And she's like, this means there will never be a tornado here. Dang. Because the wind just cannot form it. So you can, like, relax. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, if you say so.
Sounds fake.
And so every time I saw, like, leaves go in circles, I was like, a tornado, and then it never happened, and I was like, okay, maybe my mom is right. But I was very worried about them.
I was worried when I was on a swing, and you know when you're at the top of the swing and you get thrown up, I was like, I am in space right now.
I once watched an episode of Roly Poly Oly. I don't know if you remember that. It was like a TV show about robots. Okay. And it was for kids. And then there's this one episode where they turn gravity off on the planet because it's like a robot planet and everything is just like, everything has a button, even gravity. And so they turn it off accidentally and they have to turn it on again. And that's like the problem of this episode. And then the grandpa just like walks out of the house and just like flies off into space.
Oh my god.
And they never address how he comes back. Like the next episode, he's just there. But I'm like, how did he come back from being in outer space? I was traumatized.
That is alarming. Oh my god, that's too much.
Thank God you never saw that. You would have cried.
That's a real concern I had. There was an episode of Magic School Bus where they turn off friction. And that was tough for me for some reason because they couldn't walk
because you need friction to walk. So it was like being on an ice rink. But it was so stressful for some reason. I was like, oh god, I'm not looking forward to that happening to me.
But then all of this just shows how things really do impact you as a child.
Yes.
Like, you are traumatized by the strangest things.
Mm-hmm.
And does that mean we should not have been allowed to watch all of these things?
I love how all of the things we were traumatized by are, like, specifically for
They're
children.
not meant to be scary.
I don't think any adult would have picked up on this child. This particular child is going to develop a complex.
Yeah, this particular child is going to be really worried about gravity turning off.
Mm-hmm.
And her grandpa just flying off into the nowhere. I remember after that episode, so my grandparents